All right, guys, welcome to the Brand to Table podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about why 90% of your marketing is a complete waste of time. And you might be saying, what the hell are you talking about? This is your wheelhouse. This is what you do for a living. But I've been doing this for so long. We're going on 16 and a half years now, right? So I've seen a lot of mistakes. And one of the things I want to share with you is if your restaurant isn't growing, 9 times out of 10, it's not your food. It's the marketing and it's the lack of strategy and the lack of planning that actually is the culprit. So one of the things I'm going to do today in this episode is break down some of the common mistakes and then how to fix those mistakes. I'm going to give you some real life examples of what I'm doing with clients that are really seeing a huge difference in the quality of their marketing, but also the results of their marketing. So one of the big things I see is a lot of restaurants throwing a ton of money at marketing without any strategy. First example I can share with you, and you've probably done it yourself, it's boosting posts. If you just love burning $100 bills, continue to boost posts on Instagram and Facebook. It's the best way. It's the best way to do that. One of the things that, I've learned over the years is this mantra of measuring twice and cutting once. I'm a huge proponent of that. And so when I'm working with clients, I'm spending 80% of my time planning and strategizing with them to make sure whatever we come up with is going to resonate with their guests. The other 20%, it's the execution part. It's actually rolling it out and setting it all up and watching the guests roll in. So if you're going to market without a strong strategy, you're wasting a bunch of time, money, and energy. And who wants to do that? You guys are busy, right? You have to get how many things done a day without any interruption, but then also you got to market and try to get more people in the door. It's a lot to juggle. So here's what I say. Measure twice, cut once, spend some time or find somebody to help you, including myself, to get you to start thinking a little bit more strategically about your marketing because it will pay off dividends on the back end when you go to roll it out. The other thing I see a lot of restaurant owners doing is jumping on trends. And if you haven't checked out the Bro Show podcast with Jamie Giovinazzo from Eat Clean Bro, I was on his show not too long ago, and we were talking about jumping on trends. And one of the things that I explained to them was, trends come and go, but a great story about your restaurant will last forever. And he really resonated with that. And he said to me, that was probably one of the most prolific things, I've heard someone say about marketing and social media marketing in a while. And it's easy. We see these trends come and go. You get these people dancing and you get these people, doing these crazy little, mock-up skits. But, does it really blend with your branding? Does it really help you drive more reservations and covers? It probably doesn't. And next thing you know, 2 weeks later, the trend is out. And then you have all this stuff on your Instagram feed, your Facebook feed that isn't really relevant anymore. And it kind of looks silly. So it's one thing to grab motivation and grab inspiration, but your story's your own. And nobody can recreate that story. So why not lean into it and figure out ways to break that story down into micro stories and get people interested, get people hooked. I'll give you an example. Rail Steakhouse is a client of mine. They're in Tawaka, New Jersey, and phenomenal restaurant. Just the staff is amazing. The leadership's amazing. And the patrons, the guests, when I'm in there, kind of doing my thing and observing, you could see how happy they are to be there, right? And that place is loaded with story. Like, for example, the big Douglas fir that's in the middle of the restaurant dining room, and it's part of the support that holds the building up. was rescued from a forest fire in Oregon when they were building the place. The owner actually had this huge tree shipped in from Oregon and used it in the building process. Like, that is such a unique thing. The mosaic room upstairs, right? They had this tree, not the same tree, but they had this other tree that they chopped up when they were moving, when they were clearing the real estate. And they took pieces of the tree trunk and it's part of the floor of that particular room. Like, and it looks gorgeous. It looks like a legit piece of art, right? So those little stories here and there go such a long way. And look, it's got me sharing that story here with you on the show. So, think about how impactful your story was. When Jamie from Eat Clean Bro was on my podcast, if you haven't checked out that episode, it's the episode 6. He got into his trials and tribulations of growing that multi-million-dollar brand over almost 20 years. And there was a lot that came out of that. And you could see how passionate and dedicated and in love with what he does. And that's why I'm going to order Eat Clean Bro over Factor, right? Because Jamie came in with this personal touch. He shared a lot of vulnerability on that show, which I resonated with. That's why I had him on the show, because a lot of his story is not exactly the same, but his struggles resonated with me because I struggled in similar ways. And so that connection there would have never happened had he not tell that story. So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but story is huge, and I don't see enough restaurants using it in their marketing and branding. Another big problem I see when I'm watching restaurants doing, their own marketing is they're playing not to lose versus playing to win. And I'll give you a quick example of this. I was working with a client not too long ago, and we were talking about his follow-up process with particular clients that book events with them. The follow-up process is so important because they are now a customer, and existing customers are 50 to 80% cheaper to market to than trying to market to a new customer. So they're gold, in my opinion, right? And if you don't have a strong follow-up, you are leaving a ton, thousands of dollars of money on the table, right? So when I was explaining to him, we got to get a strong follow-up process going on. We can't wait 4 months to follow up with a client. We got to hit him every 30 days from the day of his event or their event and stay top of mind. And so I said, we should set up a dedicated email address where we all have access to it, but that follow-up will come out of that email address because it has to be personal, right? You can set up email automations, and that's a topic for another episode, which I'll get into. But these particular events and clients, they have to be personalized. So this is, setting out time in your day to get this done or scheduling it. You could schedule these out through Outlook and Gmail and, those types of email service providers. But so I said, let's create a dedicated email address. I'll create the campaign. I'll create 6 months worth of emails and we'll schedule them out accordingly. So he goes into his GoDaddy account and he looks and he's like, oh man, it's like $8.99 a month for another email address. Oh, God, it's just another expense. I'm like, dude, you're worrying about a $9 email address when this client just spent $40,000 on a birthday party in New York City, and you don't want to spend $9 for an email address? You know how much that client's worth to you in their lifetime? Probably $250,000, $500,000 over the course of the lifetime. You're worried about a $9 email address. That's playing to lose, man. You're not playing to win. You got to grow. And when you grow, things need to size accordingly. I gave him the example. I said, we both have kids that are 8, 9 years old. And I said, when our sons are 15 and 16 years old, right? Are we never going to buy them a new pair of shoes? Are we just going to let them wear the size 6 shoe that they're in right now? No, because their toes will be all busted. The sneaker itself will probably be all jammed up. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, when you grow, when the business grows, your marketing has to grow. Your systems have to grow. Everything has to grow with that business. Otherwise, you're like a fat kid in a little coat. You know what I'm saying? That's a Tommy Boy reference, but like I see it all the time. I see restaurants using POS software from like the early 90s, early 2000s, and I'm like, you're missing out on so much technology. And look at Toast and how far they evolved. Like, there's so much stuff you could do with your POS, the newer POSs now. I have a client now, Vinny's Pan Pizza. He's opening up a second location. The first thing he said to me was, I got to level up my tech stack, man, because I'm working in I'm working in the prehistoric ages, I feel. And I said, yeah, your tools are kind of outdated. So he signed up for Toast, and I told him, listen, I'm pretty savvy with Toast. So you get me an admin access, and I'll set everything up for you so you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on opening up the restaurant, and I'll focus on getting that Toast marketing set up for you so you won't have to worry about a damn thing. But you get what I'm saying? That's playing to win versus playing not to lose. So again, not beating a dead horse here, but big difference in outcome when you play to win. All right, so before I come on board and start helping restaurants market and set up their marketing tools and their systems, I see common ways that they're marketing, and I want to bring those to your attention because you're probably doing one of them. I can guarantee you're doing one of these, and I want you to just knock it off because you're wasting a lot of time, money, and energy again that you could be putting into other things. So the one thing that I notice is they think steep discounts or creating these really low ticket offers is a way to drive more guests into the store or into the restaurant. And I'll tell you right now, that does nothing but cheapen the brand. I'm not a huge discounter. Like, you'll never see me discounting my services. It's a little different, but one of the things that I do like to do, though, is surprise and delight, right? This is a great way to not discount, but make people feel that they're getting value, right? For example, this is so simple, but the client comes in, they sit down, they have a nice dinner, not expecting anything. You come out with a giant cheesecake and it's on the house. You come out with, I don't know, a couple little shots, half shots of an after dinner drink, right? And you actually do one with them if you drink. Those are some of the things that create connection, create relationship, and you're not giving away the farm. You're just creating an experience that makes them feel special, right? So the other thing about discounting that I will say that does work is if you do conditional offers. What do I mean by that? Well, last thing you want to do is train your guests to come in just because you're throwing a discount, right? So one of the things I'm explaining to Vinny's Pan Pizza is you got a grand opening coming up. This is a phenomenal way to execute a conditional offer. So what do? What's something that feels good for you, and you're not selling your soul here, but showcases extreme value to the customer and also creates buzz, right? We got to break through all the noise out on social media because there's something like 500 million, posts get published on Instagram a day or some shit. It's insane, right? So how's your post going to stand out from all of that? So I actually stole this from Crumble Cookies. And we actually did this when I was working with Fabio Viviani as chief marketing officer, when we were opening up those Jars by Fabio Viviani dessert shops across the country. We opened up 7 of them while I was there. And one of the things we did was everybody got their first jar free, but it was only during the grand opening, right? So prior to the grand opening, what we did was we had nice signage on the windows that said, scan here to join our VIP, and you will be invited to the grand opening and receive your first jar free. We would have thousands of phone numbers in our text app before we even opened the door, right? And then when they came, they put in their information into Square. We were using Square at the time, but I highly recommend Toast, and that's a whole nother conversation. But we had their data, right? They came in, they got their free jar, they got the test and try the dessert, and it was a win-win for us, right? What I told Vinny's Pan Pizza to do was, let's do a contest, or let's do a crazy giveaway, and let's say that we're gonna give away free pizza for a year if you scan this code and sign up for, the VIP list, right? Now, it's how you frame this, right? So at first he was like, oh, what do you mean? Like free pizza for a year? Like, am I gonna lose my shirt here? I said, no. I said, let's look at it. Let's look at what we've done in the past. I'm thinking about Crumble. I'm thinking about jars, right? And I said, no. Here's the sort of disclaimer. Whoever wins, they get one free pizza a month. What's that cost you? $1.50, $2.50, times 12 months? But the way we frame the offer makes it sound way more grand. Listen, if I see that, I'm not thinking like, oh man, I wonder if this is a hack, or I wonder if this is a joke. No, I'm just going to scan the code and try to get my free pizza for a year. I'm not really too worried about investigating, the rules and regulations of the offer, right? So he was like, dude, I could do that. Let's do it. So we created these nice, beautiful window clings that are going to go in his window, and he's going to have a ton of signups before he opens the door. Right? And whoever wins, they're going to post it and repost it on their social media feeds, and it's going to be a win-win situation. And that's how I hate using the word viral but that's how you amplify your awareness. And that's how you start to market smarter. The other thing you got to pay attention to is, what exactly you're posting on social media. And before I come on board, I see a lot of generic posting going on. And I also see a lot of focus on areas that don't really move the needle. So I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of times I go into a restaurant, I look at their social feeds, and I just see tons of food pics. And you've heard me talk about this in previous episodes. Like, food pics is not going to get me into your restaurant, so to speak. Yes, it's going to get me to compare that dish to the other restaurant down the street, but it's not necessarily going to sway me into coming to your restaurant versus your competitor. I notice a lot of restaurant owners are so concerned about the aesthetic of their social media feeds. And I got to be honest with you guys, nobody really gives a shit about your grid on social media. I'm not waking up going, wow, this restaurant's grid is beautiful. I'm going to come spend $300 there tonight. No, that's not what people do. Now, I will say, you better have quality photos for your dishes. Like, that is like the cost of entry these days, right? So you better spend the time, you spend the effort, you get a photographer, or you use Lightroom on mobile of Adobe Lightroom. It makes it super simple for you to like polish up the photos, even if you take them from your phone. But I wouldn't recommend that. I highly recommend what we used to do when I was CMO was we used to bring in a photographer, and we got frequent flyer miles from this photographer and videographer because we used them every month. He came in, he shot fresh dishes, they looked gorgeous, and we were really proud of the dishes that we were posting. So I'm not saying the dishes and the posts need to be you could post crap and just get away with it. I'm saying nobody cares really about the aesthetic. What do they really care about? They care about if your brand resonates with their philosophies and values of life. That's it. I know that sounds pretty deep, but that is really what they're looking for. And if they feel like they're going to get great service if they come. Because one of the things I realized, and I was talking to one of my clients about this the other day, I said, let's look at the reality. The reality is people are not dining out as frequently as they once were because of how much everything costs. It is what it is. And he said to me, Henry, I can't think like that. Like, I have to think about how am I going to drive people into my restaurant? And I said, well, the one thing that I do see trending and one thing that I do see working is people don't hesitate to go out if it's somewhat of an experience. So I told him, I said, let's stop focusing in on lowering our costs and creating these like killer deals and like discounting the hell out of our dishes. And let's start focusing in on experiences. Let's start thinking about how we're going to create surprise and delight when somebody pays $175 for a 4-course meal, right? And so I recommended chef tables. I recommended, showcases a steakhouse. So we can do a chef table and chef could really go over and educate people on the different cuts of meat and how they should be cooked and how Rails does it different from everybody else. And he loved it. And I said, yeah, we think about it like as a stage. We get a little platform, we raise Chef Frank up, and we create this beautiful looking set, if you will, right? And we record that. They would sell out in 20 minutes, right? So he started to think about this, and he was like, all right, we got to put some more thought into this. And like 2 days later, he hits me up with a brand rep, and he goes, we're going to do a cocktail class in October, and we're going to show everybody how to make the perfect old fashioned. I'm like, see, dude, this is what I'm talking about. So we're going to create that experience. People are going to love it. And they're going to be talking about Rails and how awesome that experience was. And then I'm going to have a follow-up sequence set up so that everybody that attended that event is going to get an email, and they're going to get plugged, if you will, every 30 days, just so Rails stays top of mind with them and us. The other thing we got to start focusing in on, guys, is tracking what it is that you're doing. A lot of times I just see marketing efforts going out, but no real way of understanding and knowing if that worked, right? Because, yeah, you might have a spike in reservations, but was it really because of that promotion? Do we have codes associated with it? Do we have trackable links? Like 7 Rooms has a phenomenal way of tracking links. So when somebody books a reservation, it came from that link, right? Open Table has the same thing. You could put a customized link in your Instagram account, for example, that everybody that books a reservation through that Instagram link shows up in your Open Table as that's where they came from, right? So that validates what it is that you're doing on Instagram and basically tells you maybe you should be doing more of that, right? One last thing that I think I should cover, and this is, you guys should know this, but I have to cover it in case, I'll feel better about myself if I mention this, but, the best marketing cannot outdo bad service. And you got to really pay attention to the experience that your guests are having when they choose to dine with you. Luckily I've had very little bad experiences recently because I'm picking the right places to go to because I'm doing my homework, and those venues are doing a great job on social media. And I know right away before I even walk in the door that this place resonates with me. This place is probably going to get me, right? And so I've been I haven't had any bad experiences, but I hear, I was at a place, well, I take that back. I was at a place the other day and it took me like a half an hour to get my check. And the server just never came back, right? And so I was like, dude, like, I shouldn't have to come to the hostess stand to pay for my check. I ordered chicken fingers. I ordered sliders, and my wife got like, I don't know, some little chicken dish. It was $100. And like, now I'm aggravated because I have to chase the server down to, pay the check. So like certain things like that, you got to button up and you got to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And listen, I get it. Sometimes you're busy and sometimes the server gets overwhelmed and things like that. I get it. But you got to stay on top of this stuff because that experience now sits with me and I'm hesitant to go back, to be honest with you. I am. I'm going to have to give them, some time to see if anything changes. And then, if it happens again, then I'll probably never go there again, period. There's plenty of other places to go. So again, bad service will trump great marketing every time. And just marketing doesn't have a chance in hell to fight bad service. All right. So let me give you some actionable steps here and we'll start to wrap this episode up. First thing I want you to do is really start to think about clear offers, clear messaging, and a clear experience for your social media followers, your guests, anybody that's going to come in contact with your brand. So your offer better be clear. The creative, right? So whether it's a video or a static image or that needs to be polished. That needs to be looking good, right? Again, I'm not worrying about what the feed looks like or what your grid looks like. I'm worrying about is the picture solid, right? Are you proud of it, right? The next thing is the destination. Once they click, once they comment, once they take action on that offer, is it easy for them to receive it? Whatever that is, right? It's a reservation confirmation, a discount code to show the server when they come in for their service. Is the destination clear? Is it, because if it's clunky, right, you're going to lose them and they're just going to get frustrated and they're going to go somewhere else, period. Like, the room for error is very, very little these days. And then I think this is the most important. It's the follow-up. It's once they dine with you, what's the follow-up look like? Are we sending out automated messages after they dine with us? And after that, what happens? So again, I think a great cadence is every month, an email should be going out to them, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's just a follow-up, and listen, Open Table, 7 Rooms, these softwares all have this automation capability inside of them. You're probably just not using them or setting them up properly. So that's something that we can help you with if you need help with that stuff. I talked about this in a previous episode, but knowing your audience and knowing your guests better than they know themselves is so huge. So I like to get very interactive when I'm taking over a restaurant social media account. I like to create polls. I like to create a dialogue inside of the Instagram stories, Facebook stories, things like that in the comments, because I want to get people on, I want to understand what people like, dislike about what we're serving, right? And once I get to know that, I'm going to put more content in front of them that I know is going to resonate with them. So surveys are fantastic. Just sitting with somebody, sitting at a frequent diner, asking them questions. We talked about this in previous episodes. This goes such a long way, and it's a win-win because you're bonding and you're creating a great experience for them and relationship with them, but you're also getting so much valuable feedback that you can implement very easily, right? And it's going to go a long way in the long term of just gaining that guest's trust and having them come back more frequently. So I just did an exercise recently with one of my clients to get an understanding of how well he knew his clients. And I was blown away. This guy knew the good, the bad, the ugly of the guests that were coming in to his restaurant. And that made my life so much easier because I now have developed certain strategies and certain communications and dialogue with his audience that I know is going to hit right out of the gate. Worst thing you could do is start marketing to people that you know nothing about. So I was pretty impressed with him. Not every restaurant operator knows their audience better than they know themselves. And I want to really reiterate that. Take the time to learn your guest psychology and their psychographics and why they do certain things. And you'll be surprised how that will inform your marketing decisions in the future and really start to get your campaigns hitting. The other thing we need to focus in on is in-house marketing, four walls marketing. It's so important. I'll give you a quick example. Your servers are your extension of all your marketing efforts. Your bartenders, same thing. They are such an amplifier of your marketing efforts. So recently, I did a little mystery shopping, right? I went to one of my clients' restaurants, and I knew, because I set up the whole campaign, that they were doing a wine dinner in a couple of weeks. So I took my new accountant out for dinner, and we're sitting there, and we're crushing red wine, right? Because I wanted to see if this server was going to pitch me the wine dinner tickets at the end of the thing, right? At the end of dinner. So we had a beautiful dinner. The server was phenomenal. She was A+. You could tell she was very seasoned. So we get to the end of the dinner, and she says, are we celebrating anything? Is there anything I can help you with? And I said, no, we're good. It's just the check. So she brings the check, and I pulled her aside, and I said, you did amazing tonight. I was like, one of the best meals I've had. You impressed a new guest that's never been here before, but you missed one thing. And she was like, what happened? I said, you didn't sell me the wine dinner. And she goes, what wine dinner? And I was like, you don't know about the wine dinner? I was like, holy moly. So I shared who I was and what the wine dinner was about. And she was like, oh my God, I didn't know. So next morning, email goes out to, floor managers, leadership. And I shared my experience. And the next thing we did was implement a communications plan for servers and bartenders. So what did we develop? I recommended we develop a WhatsApp chat, right? And a lot of those servers and bartenders already have a WhatsApp chat, for covers and things like that. Like, oh, I can't make it today. Can someone cover me? Blah, blah, blah. I have a separate one now just for marketing. And so when a new event comes out, I have access to all of them, and I send out the graphics. I send out the description of the event. So they have information about the event and they could pitch it. You want to take it a step further, you can freaking create contests out of it, and whoever sells the most tickets gets a $100 Amazon card, or like you can incentivize and gamify this however you want. But now we have full control over communications, and now there's no excuse that a server doesn't know about an upcoming event, because we have the communication plans in place now to make that happen. All right, guys, so let's wrap up this episode. One thing I want you to do after this episode is sit down and look at the last couple campaigns that you have ran and ask yourself, what parts did I miss? What parts did I hit? And really take an inventory of how you can improve that communication, that structure, that strategy to a future marketing campaign that is going to see way better results as a result of you taking action on what we talked about today. So if you want your marketing efforts generating revenue for your restaurant, let's have a conversation. I invite you to go visit brand2table.com and book a strategy call with me. And let's sit down for a half hour, 45 minutes. Let's see where you're at. Let's see where you want to go. Let's see the blind spots in between that you probably aren't catching because you're just too busy working in the business. And let's see if we can help you create something amazing with your marketing and get you the right tools and get you the right systems so that you can focus on the ops and your marketing is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Hope you enjoyed the episode, guys. Make sure you subscribe, review, follow, DM me on Instagram if you are digging the episodes. If you have any questions, concerns, or topics you want me to hit for future episodes, hit me up. Love you guys. I'll catch you on the next episode.